Well, we'll go ahead and hit record. Welcome to Design 113. This is our week 2, and I just wanted to say hi as we jump into this week's assignments. Today we're going to be talking about creating a hierarchy of information. We're going to be grabbing readers' attention with a beautiful design, and then I'm going to show you how to design specifically for print, because that's what we're practicing this week. And then we're going to do some demo poster designs. So this is what we've got for this week. Are there any questions from last week? I'll go ahead and stop the video and we'll jump into our lecture. Any questions? Nope. Okay. Well, let's talk about this week's discussion. I saw quite a few of you participate in last week's, and I really appreciate it. I thought all your visual examples were just wonderful. And since this is a visual class, a graphic arts class, I encourage the visuals and encourage examples being shared. It's kind of boring just reading, but if we have something to look at and something to pull from, then I think that makes it a little bit more interesting. This discussion, though, I did want to point out, we won't do a lot of housekeeping today, but discussion 2 is a peer review, so it's structured a little bit differently. Have you done a peer review before? You guys familiar with how to do one? Okay, so we'll talk about this a little bit. This discussion has 3 parts, so be careful that you cover all 3 angles. So first and foremost, you're going to post a JPEG or a PNG of 3 of your logo designs that you did from last week, okay? They can be the ones that you like the most, or maybe a combo of the 3, but either way, you need to post 3 of them, 3 of the logos that you designed. And then below them, I want you to explain why you made the design decisions you did and ask for any specific input that you want to receive. So we're doing some peer feedback on these, and so just of course, be nice and considerate, but also let's use terminology that we're learning. So if we're talking about font or typography, maybe if we're talking about the tools that we use or tools that we can use to achieve a certain look. So that's number 1. So you're going to post 3 examples. You're going to talk about what they are, how you made them, what were your design decisions, and then how can we improve on them. And then number 2, once your post is complete, I want you to give suggestions and comments for at least 2 other peers' works, okay? So kind of same rules that apply in every week of discussion, but this time you're going to give some suggestions and comments on how that student can improve on their designs. And then then the third thing is consider the feedback that you get. So choose the logo. You're going to post 3, but you're going to pick 1, and you're going to make some revisions to improve your design. This is the logo that you're going to be using for your grand opening poster, okay? So you want to pick 1, take the peer review feedback, take my feedback that I gave you from last week, and then I want you to make the changes and then use that for your graphic or your layout and design for this week. So please note, an image of the chosen revised logo needs to be posted for full credit. So you need to show a before and after on one of your posts, okay? So to get full credit, you need to show before you receive feedback and then the after version. And we'll learn a lot from seeing the before and afters, how drastically the changes were, how subtle they were. So that is this discussion in a nutshell. It's a little bit different because you do have to go in and make some changes, but I think it's fun because as we share our ideas, I think we can kind of pull from each other, and I think it creates a good environment for some creativity or maybe perspectives that we never even considered. So that is a peer review. That's what we're supposed to do. All the instructions are on here, even how to embed your image. If you have any trouble, there's instructions here. So that is all we're going to talk about today on this. So let's jump into our lecture. This is the fun part. We're going to talk about poster design because one of our assignments is to create a grand opening invitation flyer. And poster design and flyer design are structured about the same way. So we're going to talk about how to create an attention-grabbing poster for any event. So whether this is for a grand opening, whether it's for a musical event, a performance, a picnic, whatever it is, company, party, it could be anything. So I want you to kind of start thinking about what you're going to do for your grand opening flyer. We're kind of shoehorned into doing something very specific as far as the content's given to us and what event it is, but you have the liberty to create whatever. So I want you to put yourself thinking, okay, I'm a graphic design professional. I probably have you made a poster before? Have you guys designed a poster or a flyer? Have you done any kind of layout before? Okay, good. So this won't be too foreign. That's good to know. So if you opened up Microsoft Word and you chose a fun font and you selected some really cute, funky clip art, what would be the result? You'd probably get another cheesy, groan-worthy poster to pin on the office board, right? This is a little different. Layout and design is going to be a little different. So whether you're creating a poster for an internal event or to advertise an event to customers, like a grand opening for your company, the purpose of the event poster is to inform readers about the event and to encourage readers to participate. So those are the two basic things that we need to focus on. Okay, so here's the thing. You don't have to create cheesy posters or flyers, and you don't actually have to be a designer to create a beautiful event poster. There are a few rules that we just need to follow, and everything kind of falls into place, okay? So this lecture today is going to focus specifically on how to create posters and flyers to advertise events, which is what our assignment is this week. Now you have two assignments, and the first one is obviously to design one grand opening invitation. The second one is a research paper. So we're not going to be covering the second one because I figure everyone knows how to do some research. You write your paper, you submit it. Though the font that you do choose is important because it's also the font you're going to use for week 3 to create your typographic portrait. So choose wisely and choose one that you like and one that you're interested in. Okay, with that, that little detour, I'm going to explain, like I said, how to create hierarchy of information, what that means, and how to grab readers' attention with a beautiful design. So take a look at this little infographic here. Let's talk about following a hierarchy of information. What is hierarchy? What does that mean? What do you think when you hear the word hierarchy? What does that mean to you? Order, right, the order that you go in, okay? There is hierarchy in everything, whether you're going to a drive-through menu or you're at a restaurant, you're looking at your menu. Usually the appetizers are first, right? And then the salads, and then the entrees, and then the heavier meals are at the very bottom. Drinks are usually in the back. There's an order to things, right? So the point of hierarchy of information is that we don't want to stuff the invitation or the flyer with too much information. Instead, we want to point readers to where they can find more information. So remember the goals of this assignment. These are 1, to inform readers about the event, and then 2, to encourage readers to participate. So anyone looking at your invitation needs to get so excited about this that Jumping Spider Toy Company is having a grand opening and we've got to be there. So that's the idea behind this assignment. The only information you need on your invitation is what the event is, the date, the time, location of the event, and where people can find more information about it. That's the key thing. Whether it's a poster, an invitation, or a flyer, you're going to be putting the same basic formula onto the page. So the same basic information. So date, time, location. It's kind of like the who, where, what, when, and how do I find more information. So when in doubt, follow this hierarchy of information, okay? And I have it down here listed in this blue square for you. Oops. So I don't know if you can, whoops, I don't know if you can see it. First one's name of the event. The name of the event, because it's at the top, should it be the smallest or the largest? Largest, right? So even though these elements are going in order, they should also be scaled according to size. So the most important information is at the top, right? So it should be the biggest, the largest information is at the top. And as you move down this list, the size will decrease. It's less and less important to catch the reader's eye. You're basically saying by using font size and the way that you structure your layout in hierarchical order. Sorry, that's a tongue twister. I can't say that very well. The order of hierarchy that you place these elements, they should point the reader's eye to where you want it to go next. So you're saying, read me first, README second, README third. But you need to do that by using size, contrast, and we're going to talk about some other elements that will set information apart. So hierarchy, name of event, first and foremost, grand opening invitation. That should be the largest part of your design, okay? Not the logo, not any of the information. The grand opening should be the largest part. Company, second, company or department title. So the company that you chose, whether it's Jumping Spider Toy Company or Paramount Computer Technology Company or the Toscana Italian Bistro, whether it's a restaurant or the bank or whatever it is, this can alternately be placed in smaller font above the name of the event. So the company or the logo, whoever's hosting this event can be pretty small, just above the large grand opening, okay? Then number 3, short description of the event or a catchy tagline. Now in this case, the hard work's been done for you because the information's already been provided to you. You do have to use all of the copy. You can't edit it, you can't cut it, you can't use parts of it. You do need to use all of it. So they've given you a description. It is quite lengthy, but what I'm going to show you is how to kind of pick pieces out and how to lay them out. Number 4, the date and time of the event. That's important information, but it doesn't need to be the largest. It just needs to stand out. It just can't get lost in the paragraph that you're given. People don't want to have to like go on a word hunt to find this information. Just set it apart, and we'll talk about how to do that. Number 5, the location of the event. This is even less important, really. It can be small at the bottom. And number 6, if necessary, where can they find more information? That's usually a website or social media page or whatever that the case may be. But that stuff is usually really, really small at the bottom. Are there any questions about hierarchy of information? Use this chart as you go through your design so that you kind of check off the list. There's about 6 of these things, and you kind of want to make sure you get all 6 elements onto your invitation, okay? All right, no questions. So this is all you need. So you want to see what this looks like? More of a visual example? Don't worry, I'll show you plenty of examples throughout this lecture. You're going to see demos, you're going to see lots of visuals. Let's look at number 2, okay? Let's talk about grabbing readers' attention with a beautiful design. Well, have you looked at the assignment 2? Have you read through it? Okay, so you know that we're not allowed to use, we're not allowed to use any photography, any images, right? So how do we grab a reader's attention with a beautiful design without being able to use pictures or artwork? You know, that's kind of challenging because most flyers have really cool artwork. It's usually the artwork that's the largest element on the page that becomes the attention grabber. Yeah, you have to do it just with font, just with text. You also will, I'll show you other ways. There are a lot of different ways that you can make something really styled and appealing. So how do you make a poster attention grabbing without being able to use artwork? Well, there are a couple key ways that they fall under the basic tenets of good graphic design. So if you're not sure where to start, you can just kind of follow this little graphic. Make the title the main focus of the flyer or the invitation. Okay, so the title would be grand opening, right? That should be big and bold and pretty hard to miss. Ideally, you want the title text to be readable from a distance. So when you lay it out, I want you to kind of take 10 steps back from your computer and say, can I still read that well? Is it legible from afar? So that will tell you if it's large enough. If it's not growing across your page, like from left to right, then maybe it isn't large enough. So maybe you need to kind of up the font size a little bit. As a general rule of thumb, your title text should be about 3 times the size of your subheader and your body text, okay? So I'm gonna say that again. As a rule of thumb, the title of your invitation should be 3 times the size of your subheader and your body text. Let me show an example. You see this summer picnic flyer right here? So imagine that this said grand opening 2017, okay? So maybe you see the size difference of the headline compared to the other information? What is the largest element on the page? The title, absolutely. So this is what I want to see when I look at your grand opening. I want to see this big and bold, and I want it to be hard to miss. It should say grand opening, okay? And you can style it however you want, but look at the size difference between the title and the rest of the text. There is a significant size, okay? So this was executed correctly. All right, so let's go back to the slide. So a simple trick when you're designing titles, use the grid function. That's also helpful. However, just having your guides and your rulers out will also help you make sure text is evenly aligned with the edges of the page. That's also important. Use color to communicate. Use borders. This is all very important. Make the title the main focus of the poster, and then use one focus visual. Now, in this case, we're not really allowed to use graphic, or well, I should say artwork. So normally you would use one high quality image to make the star of the show. But in this case, I want you to use color to communicate the mood. I want you to use font size, and I also want you to use borders, and I want you to style your font so that it's interesting to read. I don't want the font to all be the same size and generally the same font. I mean, shake it up a little bit. Use plenty of negative space between text and around the margins of the page. That will give it a lot of breathing room. It'll feel fresh, clean, and modern. That's what we want. And then between images and text, it's important to have breathing room between text boxes and your images. But in this case, we're not going to be doing images. But if you do use borders, you want the same breathing room. All right, let's look at this. This one right here. So we're talking about grabbing readers' attention. So in this case, you see the potluck graphic right here. So potluck is aligned evenly. You want it to be aligned evenly with giving thanks. Do you see that kind of invisible ruler there? So you really want to make sure everything is aligned properly. That's what I'm going to be looking for. Also, this summer picnic flyer, notice how everything is kind of all left justified. I love that. Don't feel like you have to center all your information. This is a very effective way to do a left justification on your design. And what centers it is, or anchors the design, is that large word picnic, or in this case, it could be grand opening. And the word opening or picnic would extend across the page. That kind of anchors the design. So it doesn't feel like everything's flush left. It does feel like there is something going on here. The pop of color is also a great use of color to grab attention and to make things stand out, and kind of breaks up the boring gray. So when I say use full color, you can use one color or you can use many colors. But sometimes it's really effective when you just stick with a simple approach, and that's maybe one color to pop, to use to emphasize the important information, just like they did here. Okay, talking about choose the best font. Okay, this is easier said than done, but in this case, you're kind of given a list to choose from, so then you just pick the one that you feel kind of speaks to you. But in this case, we're talking about a grand opening, so we want to make sure that we choose the appropriate font for the company that is advertising this grand opening. So a toy store will have a different font use than maybe a bank. We want more of a serious look for a bank, more professional, maybe a little bit more contemporary look for a bank, whereas a toy store is a little bit more fun, whimsy, a lot could be going on. So I just want you to choose the best font. The style of the font that you choose should reflect the theme and the mood of the event. So in general, serif fonts have a classic and fancy feel because they have those little line embellishments. So maybe for an Italian restaurant, a serif font would be appropriate. Sans serif fonts tend to have more of a modern feel. Sans serif fonts are fonts sans the serif embellishment, so they don't have those extra feet, you can call it. They're just lean, mean text machines, and they're often used in very contemporary designs, very clean look. And they're often used, I would say, for headlines and titles, things that are large and stand out. You could, for example, use serif fonts to give, if you were doing an acoustic night poster, a folksy feel in this case. So here is what they did. They used a serif font, and this really gave it more of a down home, down to earth feel to the poster. I thought it did. Now they did combine, what I love about this poster is, please notice they used two different fonts. They used a serif font, and they just used the italic version, and then they used the bold version, the regular version, and then they used a sans serif font to contrast it. So in your grand opening flyer, you're encouraged to use 1 to 2 fonts. I'd say beyond that, I wouldn't go 3 or 4 fonts. It's unnecessary. So just using 1 to 2 fonts is about the rule of thumb here when we're trying to add contrast. That's an excellent way to add interest to your design as well. So just kind of shake up the fonts being used. However, I would only use the contrasting font to make something stand out or to emphasize or highlight important information. I wouldn't use it interchangeably throughout. I would just be very selective with how I used it. And talking about a sans serif font, we talked about it being more contemporary looking. This is for a more modern event, like maybe a business conference. So perhaps for a bank, you would see a sans serif font used in the grand opening invitation. So this could also be used for maybe a bank. Okay, so let's look at this other example. You can also pair up different fonts on your poster. So we just talked about this. Take the example right here, which tastefully combines 3 different fonts in the title and subheader. All right, this one used 3 fonts. I would say use about 2 to 3, but I wouldn't go beyond that, and even 3, unless you're a seasoned graphic designer, you can almost kind of muddle up your own design. So I would stick with maybe just 2 fonts as a good rule of thumb for this assignment. Don't, just because this graphic designer used 3 doesn't mean that you should use 3. I think this one is a professional looking. They kind of get the idea. So we need to learn the rules before we can break them. And in this case, the designer has broken the 2 font rule, but it works effectively. And they didn't do it everywhere. They just did it in the title, which is a beautiful looking poster. And I'm going to show you how to do this gradient background so that if you wanted to do something fun like this, you could do it as well. Color, like we talked about, is a great way to add interest. And if you notice, they took the font, the way they got this effect is they made the font white and then they changed the opacity on it. So it makes it almost like a transparent look through. It's really a really cool, really nice design. I did put the general rule of thumb here, so just kind of pay attention to that. I would really stick to 2 fonts for your invitation. Beyond that, you really don't need much more. Okay, so we're also talking about just using one focus visual. So one high quality relevant image will enforce the message of your poster or your flyer or your invitation and make it more visually interesting, obviously. But since we are told that we can't use art and photography, no clip art, while we're at it, we really need to forgo bland, corny stock photos, anything like that. It's important to focus the attention on the typography. So even without the string of lights in this example, I think that the design stands alone very well. And in fact, according to a survey, while stock photos are considered one of the easiest forms of visuals to create and use, only about 23.3% of people found stock photography does well on a desktop, and only 22.5% found it does well on a mobile. So those numbers aren't really great. Just kind of goes to show that if you can avoid using photography, do it. If you can create a typographic poster that can stand alone without any images, then the more power to you and the stronger your design, perhaps. So we're going to kind of gloss over the images, but the one focus visual can be, in this case, without the string of lights, it could just be either the headline, the way they styled it, or the background, the color gradient. That was beautiful. I thought that even the visual of the star and then the date and the time, the way they kind of put that border around it, we'll talk more about borders in just a minute. This was a really neat style element that they added. So there's a lot of ways that you can add focus, but we want focus to be on just one thing. Are there any questions right now? This is a lot of information. I'm hoping to simplify this invitation design for you so that it's not too confusing. I'm just kind of giving you the formula, and then we'll go into the design portion and do some demos. So let's talk about color, because I've been emphasizing that. We're going to rely on color this time for this design and our type to create visual interest, since we can't use any graphics. So the color scheme you choose should reflect the mood of the event you're promoting. We know that. But for example, this poster for a Halloween costume contest, this uses classic Halloween color combinations of black and orange. These are pretty traditional colors. Using a spooky ghost silhouette, readers will deduce that the poster is for a Halloween event before they even read the text. So think about that. The graphic is really important, but also thanks to the color combination, this already says Halloween without needing to read much. So they've also made the design more interesting. Now pay attention to this by using a simple design hack. The design hack is tilting the text. So you'll see this done often on posters, on flyers, or invitations. They kind of tilt the text a little bit and kind of takes it off center, off the grid. Everything's still aligned, but it just gives the eye something else to look at, and it is an effective tip or trick that you can use. So think about that. Instead of, I had one student who could only seem to wrap his mind around centering all of his text. Everything was centered on his page. He didn't know how to divide text and lay it out in such a way that it wasn't centered. And I too was in that position when I first started. I didn't know how to break the mold of just centering everything, because everything looked organized if it was centered. But how do you left justify a layout, or how do you design something that doesn't feel like everything's centered? Well, tilting text is a great way to do it. This is a kind of a way to cheat a little bit. So what you would do in this case is you'd make sure everything is aligned properly on your page, you'd group it all, and then you would tilt it. I don't recommend trying to lay something out on an angle. So does that make sense? All right. That's a design trick you can try. Again, we're talking about tilting text. So to tilt text using Illustrator or InDesign, you can simply rotate your text box. Or like I said, you'll group everything on your page, and then you'll tilt it as a group. So I'll show you how to do this, but also using color to create mood. In this case, it's yellow, red, and green. So there's a lot that can be done. The words are in red. This kind of screams holiday already. Can you add color to the logos? If you would like, you can add colors to the logos. I recommend, though, I'd recommend just using color in your layout. But if you want the color to match, I should say, if you've got a color scheme going on in your invitation and you want it to match in your logo, that's fine. You can add color. So I'm more concerned with the style or how you designed the logo than the colors you used in it. And again, I wouldn't focus too much attention on the logo, because this week's assignment, you're going to be graded on the layout of the invitation, and then did you make changes to the logo that were recommended to you. So I wouldn't mess with color too much on the logo. You can, but I would say it's probably not where I'd spend my time. Does that help, Terry? It's a great question. Just you're not going to be graded on whether or not you add color to your logo. You'll be graded on, did you make the changes? Did you take the peer feedback? Did you use the instructor feedback? That's all you're going to be graded on. So if you want to spend time on it, that's fine. But I'd like to see what you do in terms of color on the invitation. That's what you're really going to be graded on. But you can. It is open. Okay, so that is a very good question. So if the event calls for it, you may even choose to go without colors, but in this case, we're told to make a full color flyer, so we won't be going with black and white. But though, just please note, a black and white color scheme, it's kind of what you would use for holiday galas, or maybe you can use it for a fancy event, like a black tie event. So that would just be what you would use a black and white color scheme for. It would be more of a simple yet elegant effect. But we're talking about using color to create mood. So here's another easy design hack. You can also use a semi-transparent color use a semi-transparent color swatch to overlay a color over a background image. What does that mean? Very simple. You just take a colored box and lay it over an image, and you just adjust the transparency, and you can also adjust kind of the blend of the color into the photo. And that's something that will add some pop and also create uniformity around. So if you'll notice, it's a little bit easier to read this holiday party information with that green box over it, as opposed to the example in the bottom right, because it's a very busy photo, but adding that color kind of helps everything become a little bit more legible. Now the key is not to let the background image clutter up the text in the foreground, so we really want it to be a clean, smart move if you're going to do it, but this is a great way to do it. Now in this case, we're not going to be adding photography, but just so you know, this is what we would use. All right. Any questions about that? All right, we're chugging along. We're almost done. Let's talk about borders. I'm also going to show demos on how to do these things, but I want to kind of cover the principle first. So when you're making your designs more interesting by adding borders around section of text, I want you to think about it in a strategic way. So borders separate information. That's why we use them. They make it easy to digest quickly, and it also looks pretty cool. In this case, in this example, the productivity workshop poster or flyer, this one, what did they use the border around? What did they use their borders around? And then maybe I should say, how many borders did they use? They used 2. Excellent. They used a solid fill rectangle box here around the day and the date, and then they used just kind of a box around the information that they really want to stand out. So this information helps emphasize using borders helps emphasize important information. You can also use a semi-transparent square, like you see this white square over here, overlaid on top of an image. But again, we're not using images. This is just another way to do it. Now you could do 2 background colors. You could do a solid, and then you could overlay a white transparent box over that. And that kind of leaves a border around the square uncovered. This creates an image border. So in this case, you could create a color border if you just did a solid color instead of an image. But this example below, right here, uses both kinds of borders. So I just wanted to show you as an example, you can make a border by selecting your shapes or your lines and just adjusting the line width using the width function in the toolbar. It's very simple to do. Just make sure that you use a dark enough color to offset the light font, or use a light font to offset the dark background. But this is a great way that separates information really quickly. It looks good, helps it stay organized. So definitely use borders if you can. All right, use plenty of negative space. Okay, what is negative space? Can anyone tell me? Have you heard that term before, negative space or white space? Empty space, that's right. It's the empty space. It's a great way to put it. So in case you don't know what negative space is, just for those who are watching, it's the empty space around elements in a design. So Terry, you're absolutely right. When your design is cluttered with too much text and too many images and icons, it not only looks less professional, but it also becomes very hard to read. So in this case, when you're designing a layout, think less is more, okay? Negative space allows the elements on your poster to breathe a little bit, and it makes for a really sleek, more modern design. So in this case, there is a lot of breathing room around this logo or this icon, and this is a very effective use of negative space. So this example uses simple shapes and plenty of negative space to create a sleek and modern design. Look, they even used a little border at the bottom there for United Students. and it stands out very well. All right, so here's a basic rule of thumb. You should leave negative space between text, around the margins of a page, that's the border of your page, and then between the images and text, okay? So if you remember those three things, I think you'll have a very, very clean layout. So leaving negative space also means that you'll have to decide which information to keep and which information to cut. Now in this assignment, we're really not allowed to cut, but as you move on into the graphic design industry, you'll be given lots of text and you'll have to sift through it to see, okay, what's important and what's not. So in this case, they kind of made our job easy with the assignment because we don't have to cut and edit content. Rather, we just can cut and paste. So this is a good thing. Don't fear cutting information in the future. Your invitation or your poster will be really more focused and convincing if every piece of information included is relevant. And we talked about only the relevant information like date, time, location, where to find information. So those are really the basics that you should include on this type of invitation or flyer. All right, we're nearing the end. Design specifically for print. Let's talk about this. There are tips on how to design for web and tips on how to design for print, but today we're only going to focus on designing specifically for print. So if you're planning on printing out your poster or your invitation or your flyer, there are some basic guidelines that you really need to keep in mind. So the first one is visualize where you will pin up your poster. Okay, where's this poster going up? Well, in this case, if you were Jumping Spider Toy Company, you need to decide where you're going to be putting it. You probably have an idea of where you're going to pin it up. Where you decide to pin it up can help you make a few design decisions. Like if it's going on a wall with a bunch of other posters, you might want to print your poster in a larger size so it'll stand out. And then if it's going on a relatively bare wall, print it in a smaller size and pin up a bunch of them to create an impact. So that's just kind of a little rule of thumb there. Now, when you're designing your poster, you probably want to stick to a standard paper size. In this case, we're given the dimensions of what we need to have, and I believe it's an 8.5 by 11 dimensions for our poster. But unless you want to create a big poster, you probably don't want to spend the money on getting it printed. So you can print it yourself, but you definitely want to make sure that you keep it a standard paper size. That's usually a good way to start. And then let's talk about colors. Have you heard of RGB and CMYK colors? Have you heard of this before? It's a little foreign to some. Okay, Terry's heard of it, good. So certain colors won't turn out right when printed. That's just how it is. I know, it's very frustrating. That's why it's important to use the right color palette from the get-go. So you don't really want to get attached to a design that won't translate properly in print. How do we avoid that? Well, CMYK colors stands for, do you know what CMYK stands for actually? Any guesses? Yep, cyan, magenta. Those are the two hardest ones. Yellow and black. Give Terry a round of applause. Very good job. That's hard. That's very good. Not many designers even know what that stands for. So CMYK, so it's cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. So printers use CMYK colors to ensure that your poster or your print job looks the way that you intended it to. If everyone's using the same color palette, then it will print correctly. You know, when you're designing your posters for print, you definitely want to use the CMYK in the first place, okay? Do you see the difference between the two color wheels though? RGB is often used on the web. They're brighter colors usually, but look closely and see the difference when they overlap each other and they're a little bit brighter. CMYK is a little bit duller. But it's just interesting. I want you to just pay attention to the difference because RGB is used for web and then CMYK is used for print. All right. Choose a font that's easy to read from far away. This is interesting and it's very important for the invitation assignment. I know that you may be tempted to use Comic Sans for a poster advertising, maybe a staff party or a toy company, but please restrain yourself. I can't tell you how overused this font is. You are a professional. Also, hold yourself back from using those fancy curly-whirly fonts for the Italian restaurant. They're very hard to read from a distance, and so I want you to just avoid them in general. The following graphic here will kind of help you decide whether or not you should use a specific font for a poster or an invitation or flyer. So the simpler, the better. Now look at the difference. More of the fancy, fun fonts are kind of our no's, right? And then the yeses are all very clean serif or sans serif fonts. So pretty straightforward fonts. So you see, you still have plenty of options for nice fonts that reflect the theme of your event, but you really want to be careful about the font you choose. So size the fonts between 24 and 48 points big. If it's too small, people really won't be able to read it from a few meters away, and it will probably not pay attention to it. So if we're designing a poster, that's kind of the rule of thumb. Basically, you just want your title of your poster to be about 3 times larger than the rest of the text on the page. So that's like we talked about earlier. Are there any questions about this, about choosing a font that's easy to read from far away? I guess in this case, you are limited to what fonts that you're supposed to download, so you can't use any font that you want, but this is definitely important to point out as you move forward in designing. All right, let's talk about, for a minute, exporting in the right resolution. So blurry pictures are very annoying and can be easily avoided by just simply exporting your layout in the right resolution. If you export in a 300 dpi resolution, that image won't come out blurry. So you'll notice as you export a PDF in InDesign, it'll say, do you want the smallest file size, or do you want to do what DPI do you want this to be, and you'll have an opportunity to kind of set it up that way. You also want to set up bleed marks. Bleed in printing, the word bleed in printing is when you have an image or an object touching the edge of the page. So when you design a poster or flyer, invitation, or any layout at all, it could be a magazine layout, and you have an image that is flush with the edges of the poster, or magazine or layout, your printer will automatically leave a thin white line around the edge of the paper, and sometimes it's uneven. So when your document has a bleed, it needs to be printed on a larger sheet of paper, then it's kind of trimmed down to your intended dimension. And I'll show you how to set all this up, but to print so that there's no white margin around the edge, you really have to set crop marks and a bleed line. And these will designate where your design ends on the page. This is telling the printer what you had in mind so that they can crop the poster or the layout after it's been printed and it's done correctly. All right, that was the last point I wanted to make about that. Okay, so here we are. Let's see. I did have a little video I wanted to show just about fonts in general. Have you heard of the Helvetica, the movie? You heard of that before? Okay, so I hadn't heard about it before until I started doing some research on, so I started teaching this class really a few years ago, and I came across Helvetica the movie. And so we're going to take a look at the trailer. But what this shows is it helps you understand the origin, the creation, and history of type, and some really commonly used typefaces. You will see Helvetica used. This trailer shows you how Helvetica is used in just about every logo that you see in this clip, and how different it looks just because of the way it's styled or laid out. So it's a classic font, but we're going to take a close-up look to how it's used, and you might even see some companies or products that you use, and that'll be pretty neat. So let me get this set up.
All right, so what did you think? Kind of interesting to see how many ways it was used, and whether it was a poster or an advertisement. Yeah, it's a pretty cool cool movie trailer. I love that one. I like showing it. It's also
Just wanted to point out that as you're doing your research paper, Helvetica might be a really interesting font to choose for your paper because there's a lot out there. It's been around for a very long time. It's a universal, very classic font that's used quite often, but it's just everywhere. We saw all the stores it was used, even just the signs or any message. Helvetica is often used. So this would be a really cool font to feature and to kind of dig up some history on with your research. So just wanted to throw that out there. Usually it's hard to find information on fonts, but Helvetica is definitely one of those that have been out there for a long time. Same with Futura. It's been out there and it's used a lot. So just wanted to kind of show you that. Okay. Well, let's fast forward here, see where we are. Okay, so let's talk about organizing text, organizing information. We talked a little bit about the hierarchy of elements on your page, and I definitely want to talk about creating emphasis and mood. It can be accomplished through tracking, letter spacing, leading, alignment, line breaks, fonts, and styles. So we'll go over a few things. I have some demos that I wanted to do. We got quite a few slides, but I don't think we're going to go through all of these. I did want to show you real quick just some basic visual examples. When it comes to alignment, you really want to make sure you pick a good one. Size and spacing does influence the way that type looks in different alignments, so you really want to play around with that, but make sure it's all legible, easy to read, and doesn't look like it's squished together. We want some breathing room, so leading might be a good way to add some of that. As far as how to align your text, just make sure everything lines up. Do you see these green vertical lines? This green line touches it shows that the headline extends from the left to the right, and that everything lines up. Even the second column of text here lines up with this green line. So everything is just kind of on the left and the right, it's aligned correctly, and it lies flush with each other. So use your guides, use your rulers so that you can make sure everything is lined up properly. Here's a vertical example. This is a vertical alignment. Now the text is aligned with the top, and it's also aligned with the bottom margins of this page. So this is what I'm going to be looking for in terms of layout. I want to make sure everything is lined flush with each other, everything is lined up with each other, that text isn't off. We want to make sure everything is there's this invisible line that we're using. I want to show you this, the edge. Notice how the word the edge lines up perfectly on the left side with the text. This is what I'm also going to be looking for. I want to make sure that you're using your rulers to line up your headline and your body text. I want everything to be lined up and not staggered all over the page. This text is aligned along the top edge, and that's very important. That's what I'm going to be looking for in terms of layout. All right, again, this is a way to center text, but even when you center text, it all has to be able to center up together on the page, and then it has to be centered on the page. So make sure you use your rulers and guides. If your smart guides are on, you'll see those purple indicator lines kind of tell you where it snaps into place. This is your center line. So it tells you, you don't have to eyeball it. So make sure that is turned on. That's definitely something to point out. Now, if you go the whimsical, loopy, curly font route, which I recommend not going, but if you do, This is what you're going to be graded on. I want to make sure the alignment is correct. It shows you two different examples. We need to make sure that everything lines up with that ruler, nothing crosses over, okay? This is an example of misaligned text. It creates a focal point because everything else is lined up. So again, to know the rules, or you can break the rules once you know the rules, but in this case, this one line of text stands out because everything else is correctly aligned. So this is also a way to create a focal point, or maybe a point of interest on your page. Now, we talked about empty space, negative space. It's kind of a similar thing. And white space, it's another way we refer to the negative space. Now, you usually want it on the left and the right of text as far as headlines concerned. You also want space between your larger text and your smaller text. So you want to give a good amount of breathing room. We don't want to stack things on top of each other. You have a whole page, so we kind of want to spread it out a little bit. Again, here are some examples of the spacing that you want between your words that can be achieved through tracking. I wouldn't mess with tracking too much unless you're trying to do it for a stylistic purpose. I would probably just use the default tracking on your text. And then here's active white space on the left. I want to show you just an example of how someone laid something out. You kind of leave the left margins and the left large spaces between the heading and this body text, and then the logo, in order to create a structure within this design without overwhelming your eye. So everything's very balanced. Again, they use size to create interest, visual interest, and it's beautiful. It works well. Now, if you move to the right example, the passive white space, the spaces between the words, the letters, and the lines are considered passive white space because passive white space occurs naturally, but you can change it if you want to and more, or reduce the amount of white space in the design. See how tight the letting is, or maybe how spread out the tracking is. This is not as effective. So we want to make sure that we keep everything uniform, consistent, and that it looks pleasing to the eye. Okay, here's another example. This text is easy to read because the margins and the line spacing are large enough to avoid cluttering the space. So again, using size, even contrast here, bold and regular, that could be a great way to add some visual interest. But look at the bottom example. If the line spacing was smaller and the text was placed closer to the margins, it would still be a little bit more difficult to read. And also notice there's no breathing room between the paragraph of text and the bolded text. So make sure you give yourself some breathing room. You spread it out a little bit. Don't be afraid of using that white space. That's also very important. All right, well, we won't go any further into our slides. I think we will take our 10-minute break here. There's so many rules, so many things to go over. But I think for sake of time, well, I'll show you this one because this is important. All right, let's talk about hierarchy. This is what you're going to be graded on, so I will touch on this as much as possible. Look at the left example. It says hierarchy organizes and directs, though they spelled organizes wrong. Organizes and directs a reader by grouping together related elements to create a focal point of interest. Notice how this headline here, this title of the poster stands out. It's a focal point of interest. It's not the crown, it's the typography. A well-executed visual hierarchy will guide the reader effortlessly through your design from beginning to end. So that's why hierarchy is so important. Now on the right example, this is kind of an example of kind of breaking the mold. Everything else is kind of left justified but centered on the page. And then the typography of Paul Rand, this title here kind of breaks the mold. Again, we talked about that earlier. There's one misaligned text that usually becomes the focal point. But notice how everything gets smaller on the page as you move down, and that's what I want to see on your invitation. The larger information is at the top, and then as you move down the page, I want it to get smaller and smaller. Okay? Are there any questions about hierarchy and grouping? Okay, so this will be a good time to take our break. We'll come back in 10 minutes and then I'll be doing some demos and show you how to do the design portion. So pull up your Illustrator. We'll be working in Illustrator today. I'm going to be doing the flyer. You can do the flyer in InDesign or Illustrator, but some of my demos are going to be in Illustrator today. So you can pull up whichever program you feel comfortable, but if you want to work alongside with me, definitely recommend launching your Illustrator. So we'll see you guys in 10 minutes. Okay, so are we back? We are going to jump right into our design portion. And what I'm going to have you do is open up your Illustrator. So for this tutorial, we're going to use a specific dimension. Let's see. No, maybe I won't. We'll see if we can just do it. So create a new document, and it doesn't matter what size at this point. I'm just going to be working off of this little artboard here. I'll draw an artboard. I'm just going to show you how to create some really neat background to give some interest. And this is how to create vector sun rays. So if you have your document up, Terry, do you have yours up? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click and drag across my stage while holding the Shift key. Hold the Shift key down while you click and drag any object or type, and it will constrain the proportions so that you don't get this skewed, squished look. All right, so when you're drawing a circle or an ellipse with your ellipse tool, you're going to definitely want to hold down the Shift key as you expand or decrease the size. And then you're going to release the mouse button when you've drawn the circle that you want. You're going to make sure that the fill is turned off and that the stroke is set to black. All right. And you can adjust that information here at the top here. You see your stroke color palette right here. And let me see. All right. Can you see that? We've got my circle. I've got a black stroke on it. Okay. Now that we have our circle, we want to make the fill transparent, like I said, and then turn the stroke to black. So that's what I have. Now from the stroke tab, you want to make the stroke width about 50 or more. In this case, it's a small circle, so I wouldn't do 50. Just kind of check the dashed line. And so we're going to go to Window, or drop-down menu, click on Stroke. It's all alphabetical, so it'll be here at the bottom. And then you've got your stroke dialog box here that's going to pop up. And we're going to probably set the width to, I don't know, let's say 20. What does that look like? And then click the dashed line. Could probably stand to go 40, maybe 50. There we go. All right, so let's try 50. And then you've got the dashed line clicked, and make sure that it is set to aligns dashes to corners and path ends, adjusting links to fit. So make sure it's this right one, this right button here, and not the left. We don't want them to run into each other. And then after you've got that set to about 50, then change the color value, I'm sorry, not the color value, then change the value of the first dash value as long as the lines are not intersecting each other. So what that means is just probably keep this around 8 to 12. Whoops. 8 to 12. So I'm going to do 8. The higher the number, the bigger the ray is. The smaller the number, the smaller the rays, or the more rays you get in the circle. So line's about 8. Weight is about 50. Okay. In this tutorial, I'm using 8 point. Now it's like we're almost done. So click. So now that we're done with the stroke, you're gonna, with it selected, you're gonna click on Object, Expand, or Expand Appearance, whichever one it will let you click on, and then go back to Object, Expand. So you'll probably have to do it twice until you get this box that pops up. And it says, what do you want to expand? You're going to deselect your fill box because you don't want that. You don't need it. And keep your stroke box selected. So the only thing we want to expand is our stroke. And hit OK. And what that does is it automatically turns each ray into a little vector. Okay, and so from the Tools menu, we're going to click and hold the Warp tool. So the Warp tool is a hidden tool, and it's found under, let's see if I can find it. It's usually found under your width tool, but it's right here, the pucker tool, or I'm sorry, the warp tool. So if you click on your warp tool, it'll also have other tools in there. The one that you want to use is the pucker tool. Now, before you use it, I would double click on it. Double click on that pucker tool, and then you can adjust the size of it. Now, the idea here is to make it no bigger than your circle. You just want it no bigger than the inside of your circle. And then hit OK. Oop, that's not good. I don't want that. I want a perfect circle. So I'll do 3.5 inches by 3.5 inches. I'm just gauging. I don't want it bigger than my circle. It's got to be smaller than it. But with a simple click and hold of the button, it allows me to create that starburst effect. Now, I can click and hold, and if I angle the mouse at any direction, it now gives me a different effect. But clicking and holding in the dead center will create that starburst effect. All right, you see how I did that? So what I want you to do is try it, and I can step you through it. It's pretty simple. I just want you to draw a circle, add a black stroke, make sure dashed line is selected, and then I gauged about 50 points, just depending on how big your circle is. And then by using the pucker tool, after you expand the appearance, it will allow you to create this starburst effect. So Terry, are you going to be trying it out with us? Do you want to take a few minutes? I'll give you guys a few minutes to try this effect. I'll back up and try it again. So what we have here is I'll grab the ellipse tool. I'll just do it again, nice and slow. Draw my circle, hold down Shift. I want a black stroke. The stroke is about 50 points. With my stroke box open, I can select dashed line, the one on the right, and then I only want to adjust the first dash box, and I'm going to choose 8 point. Then once I've set those settings or have those settings, go to Object Expand or Object Expand Appearance and just click it until you get this box that pops up, the expand box. And remember, we only want to click on stroke. We only want stroke selected. And then you'll hit OK. And so what that does is it individually creates, these rays are now individual vectors. So by clicking on the pucker tool, you'll double click on the pucker tool and you'll adjust the size because you want it just smaller than the circle itself. So see how my pucker tool is smaller than my circle? And by clicking in the center, it allows me to create this starburst effect. Well, it's pretty fun, pretty cool effect. Now, what do I do with this? Well, I'll show you what you can do with it in just a minute. We're going to create a layout. And this is going to be our background, this starburst effect. So I'll give you guys about 3 minutes to try to get a circle drawn. Let me know if you run into any problems. Terry, if you already have this done, if you want to show us your result, we'd love to see it. Now, what's neat about this tutorial is once you've created your vector sun rays, you can give it a different color. And it makes for a really neat background. Terry, would you like to show us, or did you run into any questions as you were doing this? This is a really unique, clean, usable design for whether it's web or print. This is pretty versatile and you'll often see it. Now, what I usually like to do is place it over a solid background. So maybe for a grand opening flyer, we want it for a background. And say I decided to do more of a green, let's see. I can find the right shade of green. Okay, and then send this to back. And I've got this starburst that I'm going to turn to white. And then I can adjust the transparency so it's a really subtle effect. And then I can just expand it, or off of the page a little bit. And you get this really cool effect. Okay, and let me know too if you need me to step you through it. So this is a really cool effect. Now, when you're laying out your grand opening invitation and you expand an image like this or a graphic like this over the page, you're going to want to constrain. You want to create a clipping mask. Basically, what this clipping mask is will keep everything within the constraints of this box. You're telling it, stay in this box. Don't go over the page. You want no fill, no stroke on the box, but you also want this box to be the first layer, so bring it to the front. And then highlight everything that you want to fit in this box. Right click and click clipping mask, and that will fit it all inside for you. So now you've got this really cool starburst effect. And this makes for a really, really neat background, just depending on your color scheme. All right, Terry, how's that sunburst coming along? Feeling comfortable? Not good? Can I help? Why don't you share your screen? I'll help step you through it. This one's a simple one once you get the hang of it. So I want you to feel comfortable with it if you can. So what I'll do, Terry, I'll go ahead and unmute your mic. Okay, so it looks like you added some, can you click the X on that top of that cube or that prism? We want to take that off because we don't need that.
Kind of won't let me.
It will let you.
No.
Go ahead and just create a new document. We'll just start fresh.
Okay.
You almost got there though. You got the right stroke and everything. Let's create a new document. Okay, perfect. So go ahead and draw your ellipse. Hold down Shift. Perfect. And give it a stroke, or I guess grab your stroke box and we can do everything in that. You can grab your stroke box by going to the window drop-down menu. Click on stroke. There you go. And then this allows you to change the weight. So I'd shoot for maybe 30 or 40. That might be good as a starting point. Yeah, that's fine. You can go to 50 if you want. And then, yep, dashed line. And then the first one, 8 point. That looks good. So then hit, I guess you're okay. So now go to Object. You can hit Command Z if you need to. Here you go. Go to Object, Expand, or Expand Appearance. There you go. And then do it one more time until you get the expand box that pops up. There you go. And take off the fill. We don't want that checked. We just want the stroke. And then hit OK. Perfect. Now go ahead and grab your pucker tool, or double click on your pucker tool. There you go. And then maybe make it 3 inches by 3 inches. Let's see what that looks like. Oops. Double click on it one more time.
Oh, 13. My bad.
There you go. Perfect. Now hold it over. The idea is we want it to overlap the inner points of the circle, but okay, so it's a little small. So maybe go 5 inches by 5 inches or 4 inches by 4 inches. We'll click it again. You go by 4 by 4. Try that. There you go. Now hold it over in the middle, the very center of the circle. Click and hold the mouse. There you go, and release. Perfect. So there you go. You've got your starburst. Now, if you grab your selection tool, the black arrow. Now you can adjust the color, and you can kind of play around with the opacity a little bit. But that's how you do the sun rays. Very good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so let's jump back into Illustrator. And let's look at how we can create maybe some embellishments on a poster. These are always fun to do. If you wanted to do a banner, maybe say for your grand opening, I'll go ahead and turn your mic off, I'm sorry. There we go. And sometimes you see these banners. Now these banners you can find on dafont.com as just a free download font. You can often find fonts that already have these in their glyphs. And I cannot remember the name of the font. There's one font out there that actually does have these in their glyphs, but I can't remember it. But it's important to know how to draw them. So let's learn. If you weren't going to just download a font, you can also just create it manually. So draw a rectangle, and you can give it any fill you want. Take off the stroke. I'm just going to do a black because we're going to stay simple. Okay. Oops. So here's my black rectangle. And then what I'm going to do is grab another. I'm going to draw a square. And then I'm just going to copy it. So you can either hit Command C, Command V, or you can hold down your Alt Option button. And when you see the double arrow, that means it will allow you to copy. And with my Smart Guides on, look at how it automatically spaces this object for me. So it's even with those snaps into place with those purple intersect lines. Love it. That's what we want Smart Guides on for. All right, so now I have a rectangle on each side. And now I'm going to create a triangle. So click on the star tool and select the star tool. By clicking once on your artboard, it allows you to create some points. And I just want 3 points to create a triangle. So this is your basic triangle. And I'm going to rotate the object, hold down Shift to get it to snap into place. And this rectangle, I'm going to make sure it has no stroke, but I do want a white fill. I'm going to kind of bring it in until it starts looking like the edge of a banner. I'll highlight both of those and group them. And in this case, I'll just copy and paste it, rotate it, hold down Shift, and then I'll bring it over. And how you space these is entirely up to you. Sometimes they're kind of off center, sometimes they're tilted. One's down, one's up. So it just depends on the look that you want. This is a really cool way to do a banner, to set apart some information. Another way to divide information is by creating a line. And with that line, you can really do all sorts of things. There's different effects you can give it up here. Another thing you can do is you can give it a stroke, however thick you want, and you can give it different effects. Do you want it a uniform effect? You want, a tapered effect? Lots of different things you can do with these embellishments. And then to create a gradient, if you want a really cool, colorful background to your design, since we have to do it in color, the way that you create a gradient is you'll just draw a box. And this took me forever to figure out when I was when I was in school is how do you create a gradient? It was always so frustrating. And no one really explained it to me, so I kind of had to figure it out. So the way that you do a gradient is there's a gradient box here on your toolbar, and this allows you to kind of adjust the positioning of your gradient box. But more specifically, it brings up your gradient dialog box, and you can also find this in your window drop-down menu, okay? And you'll select a color. To get rid of colors, you just click on these gradient sliders and pull down. That will delete them. To add them, just simply click on the bar anywhere and it will add another one. To change the color of a slider, you double click and it will open up. You know, you can pick any color here or adjust the sliders, or you can manually enter a value, okay? So this is a neat way, or if you already have pre-programmed colors you want to use, you can just use them from your color swatches. So that's how you'll change the colors. You just double click, brings it up. All right. You can choose radial or linear, whatever suits you. You can also change the direction of the gradient by selecting on the gradient tool. Click and drag at any direction, and it will give you a different effect every time. It's kind of cool. See that? So it just really depends on the look that you want. Now, I recommend not going too crazy. If you're going to use a very colorful background, that probably means that you're going to want to keep your colors of your font just white. We want to keep it simple. So remember, we only want one star of the show here. We don't want several different. But that concludes how to add some embellishments to your design. I do want to show you, though, how to lay out a poster. So we have about half an hour left. So this will allow me to maybe get one good design in, maybe two, depending on how fast you work. Are there any questions on how to achieve those embellishments that I just went over? Are you stuck at all? Okay. And you can always go back and watch the tutorial. So what we're going to do is you're going to go to File, New Document. You're going to select the dimensions of the poster. And I believe that, let me go check, double check that so I don't give you the wrong. I think it's a very specific horizontal or vertical look, but I think it's like 5.5 inches by something. So let me go check so I don't give you the wrong dimensions. I apologize. I thought it was 8.5 by 11, but they're having us do different ones. Let me pull this up real quick. Okay, 5.5 by 8.5. You can do portrait or landscape. So in this case, I'm going to do a portrait layout because usually posters or flyers that you see are portrait. So I'll go to File, New. And if you haven't set up your document already for this assignment, go ahead and do it with me. We'll just create a new document like usual. Now this is different because we don't have it preset into our InDesign, so we'll have to customize this on the right. So the width can be 5.5, and then inches. Height is 8.5 by 11. And then I'll do 2 artboards. In your case, you only need 1 artboard. Okay, I'm just going to do an extra thing for you. Now we talked about bleed. This is probably where you would put it. I usually like to do a 1/4 inch bleed, 0.25 inches. Oops, 0.25. And then make sure top, bottom, left, right is all 0.25. We're going to be working with CMYK color. And hit create. All right, so here's our vertical. You can do horizontal. I like vertical, just whatever appeals to you, whatever you have in mind. So the first one I'm going to show you is, see if I can pull it in so you can see what I'm doing. This design that I saw, and I really liked it. I thought this one's really clean. It kind of has all the elements that we need on it. It even has a little starburst vector sun ray in the background that we could kind of copy the layout. So here's the thing. In real life, you're not going to be able to copy another person's work, but since we're learning and we're all students here, what I want you to do is go to Google, type in invitations, grand opening, just kind of search poster design and find a layout that really appeals to you and kind of just tailor your design to it. So in this case, I'm going to kind of copy this design and translate it into our assignment. So let me get that pulled up. All right, now this will be from one of the companies that you designed logos for, but here what I'm going to do is pull the copy that we're supposed to use and pull it into here. There we go. Now you will have to make an adjustment to the copy, and that's, are you going to say new store, branch, or location? In this case, I'll just say location, keep it simple, take out, choose one. And this is the copy. Okay, now it doesn't say we're stuck with the order of the copy. We can adjust the order all we want. We just can't change the information, okay? So what we're gonna do first and foremost is set up our background. So I'm gonna grab some color. I like this because this is a very text-heavy design. And I'm gonna use my eyedropper too. This is a really cool way to grab a color that you really like without having to search for it. And then with our type tricks, I'm just gonna grab that starburst that we created, copy it. I'm gonna pull it into my new document here. And I'm gonna expand it nice and big so it covers my whole page. Make sure all the edges, and you can center it any way you like. I'm gonna kind of just make sure it's centered on the page here. If I wanted just to highlight the grand opening part, I could kind of move it up a little bit. And then remember we talked about making a clipping mask. Clipping mask is important because it kind of keeps all the elements that are bleeding off your page. It keeps it all into one little box. So you'd start by drawing a box the size that you want. And in this case, it's the size of our page. And then I right click to make sure it's bring to front. I want it in the foremost layer, frontmost layer. And then I just simply highlight everything. I want my background, I want my starburst, and the box that I'm going to be creating the clipping mask in. Highlight everything, all of this, right click and make clipping mask. So what that does is it clips it down. So now I don't have stuff hanging off the page. Also, it allows me to see here at the bottom corners, my starburst does not reach the corners, and so I want to be able to adjust that. How do you get back in it? You just double click. This will allow you to make some adjustments. So I'm just going to move these down. Okay, and then double click off the page. So now I've got my starburst. This will also help me see that the starburst is not transparent enough. So I'm going to go in and kind of adjust the transparent. I really want it subtle. We don't, again, with your color, any embellishments, we just want them subtle. We don't want them to be the star of the show. After all, our typography is what we want to show off and showcase. All right, it's nice and centered, and now I'm going to draw a line. We talked about borders, we talked about lines. These are great ways to add some visual interest and also divide the text so it's not so text heavy. It kind of gives it something fun to look at. We'll stick with 1 point on that. So I'll grab this information. You are cordially invited to and I'll put it up here. And in this case, it's kind of using a fancy font. I'm not quite sure what font you were able to choose from. I'll do Times New Roman because I'm sure that's on your list, and I'll do an italic. Keep it black. And maybe bold italic would be good. And then I'll just center it. So I'm going to move, I'm going to move this down. This is where I'll just kind of center everything, wait for my smart guides to line it all up for me. And then this is where I'll type in grand opening, because that's the other part of the sentence, grand opening. I'm going to move this down. And I'm going to use Helvetica because we can. And Helvetica, I can spell it right, hold on. I want this heavy, or maybe black condensed will be good. And this seems to be all caps, so I go to type, change case, uppercase. All right, so that kind of changes it. And then my font is very, very big. So this is where I go and adjust the size of my font. Remember we talked about making it 48. Right now I'm at 90 point, so this can be quite large, and we want it to be, but we don't want it to extend beyond this white stroke line that we have. We want to kind of center everything well within it. And then the word opening, I'm actually going to make much smaller, like the example. This one I'm going to make maybe 70 point. And I'm going to center it all together. And this is where I'm going to adjust my leading. Remember you did those exercises last week on how to adjust your leading? This is where I'm going to tighten grand opening. Hang on, my Illustrator is thinking. Whoops, I don't want to save. Though you should. Okay. So I'm going to highlight everything. I think I will keep it the same size just for uniformity. Highlight it. And this is adjusting the leading. I'm going to make it nice and tight, not so they're stacked, but just so there's a little bit of space between them. And then this font color will be white, because I think that'll stand out nicely and contrast well with the black font above it. Kind of wait till this centers. And now that I see what this looks like, I can even stand to make this a little bigger. I'm going to make this a little larger. What I want to do, what I'm trying to accomplish, is I want the G and the D to end with the O and the G at the bottom. So I kind of want it all to kind of align up correctly right under there. Okay, so there's my grand opening text. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the opacity on it just a little bit. Not a lot, just a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to grab some other information. Of our location was the next part that I had to include. Again, I'm going to go Helvetica. I'm going to do the same. I guess I'm not going to do Helvetica. What I'm going to do is kind of finish the same, use the Times New Roman that's above. Kind of center it with that. I want the same amount of space that sandwiches my grand opening. I can even move this over to the far right. Kind of change up the design a little bit and move this over to the far left. So that kind of looks nice. It just depends on the look that you want to go for. I like this because it's not so centered. I don't like everything centered, and in this case, this design is. So if we want to break the mold a little bit, this is probably a way to do it. All right, now what's next in our text box? Let's see. Come celebrate with us and enjoy a live concert. Okay, so there's more information here. So this is where we need to start deciding what is important to feature. I think it's important to feature the date. We do need to know the dates and the time. And then we have this celebration from Christina Aguilera. So I'm going to grab this text. I'm going to draw a box, paste it in there. This will go here at the bottom. Now I want to style this, so I'm going to use a different font. I'm not quite sure what I use. Let's try Futura. The problem with Futura is that Futura and Helvetica kind of look similar to each other. So I'll have to do some styling to it. But the word Christina Aguilera seems like it would be something important, right? So we probably want to up the size of it. Now the problem with upping the size is it kind of messes with your leading. If you'll notice, there's some uneven leading here. So I'm going to maybe just give it a different color. Or if I'm going to make it stand apart, I'd probably do it in its own, I guess, probably do it in its own box. It's kind of up to you. But in this case, let's see. Take off that stroke. There we go. So I'll just make it white so it stands out. Or I could even make it a cool color, like maybe a yellow. Just something that will pop. And something that will complement the layout. So green and yellow tend to go well, but I don't necessarily like that shade of yellow. So I'll just have to play around until I get the right shade. I just want something light and just off. Just a little off-white than what we've got going on here. Okay, we talked about embellishments. So I could use this line again to kind of separate the information from the paragraph, and I want this to be centered and lined up well. Oops. Okay, why is it not copying? There we go. And I want the same amount of space between my lines and the text is on the top as it is on the bottom. So you'll need to make sure that you do that as well. All right, so I've got my information here. Now is for the important part. So the first date I'll feature. Okay, and this is where I'm going to go to Helvetica again. The reason why I'm using Helvetica for this is that I want a condensed look, and it seems to be the only thing that can give me a condensed look. But because everything's bold, I don't necessarily want to go bold. I just want it to stand out. So I'm going to do a bold condensed, but it's not as heavy as the other fonts. So again, this will stand out, but it will also create contrast. Because the body text is black, I will be using white on this. And I'll grab the other date because that was also important information. I'll kind of just use the eyedropper tool on it so that we can, I'll get it the same. And then I'm going to make sure everything's uppercase. And I want to set these dates aside, kind of make them stand out. So I'll center this with the rest of the page, kind of make sure everything's centered the way it should be. Now, I showed you one of the embellishments. You can find embellishments in glyphs too, and you don't have to create your own. In this case, I'm just going to use this little embellishment right here. This one I created earlier. There's two squished triangles and a circle. Make sure it's white and small. And that kind of adds a style element to it as well, kind of setting aside these dates. Also, what you could do is draw a box around it, which is kind of like what they did. I will use kind of a white stroke. And that kind of matches the stroke that's going on at the top, the line that we used. This is kind of neat. If you want to give it a little bit more breathing room, you can kind of extend the box a little bit. We don't want too much empty space between it. And you want an even amount of space on the left as you have on the right. So it might take a minute to kind of adjust. But there's those dates. So that stands out. That's nice. Let's see. Could make this black if I wanted. Okay, there's more information, but notice as I'm moving down the page, I am starting to get smaller and smaller with my text. And because I used because I used Futura for the body text, I'm going to use Futura again for this information. It's not going to be the same formatting, though. I will use a regular or a light. I can do a light version, and the font will be a lot smaller. This is like call to reserve receipts. This is not important information. This actually can go here at the bottom. And I want to line that text box up with the edge of that stroke line there. And they seem to do a cool little divide. I'll go to my glyphs, or you can draw a circle, however you want to do it. If you go to type, glyphs, I just want to look for a little circle, found it. If you double click on it, we'll put it right there. I'm going to go to type, create outline, so it's just this little circle. And I'm going to put it right here to kind of divide everything. And then must be 21 or older is the other information I want to divide. This is very non-important. I mean, I guess it is important, but it's not the star of the show. So it's just kind of for your information. All this information can be found at a website or anything like that. So what I'm going to do is line this text up with the other one. There we go. Equal amount of space between this little circle. We're going to center this. Just like that. Okay, so it's starting to come together. It's starting to look good. This line here, we could even, I like it there, so we could even move. I don't want to go crazy with lines, but I just want to show you that you can use borders to separate information. I'll delete that. And then all you really have is this little paragraph here, seating is limited. This can also be very small. Not important, but it might be good to know. But I want everything to line up with this stroke. I'm going to grab my ruler so you can see it. You go to View, Rulers, Show Rulers. If I click and drag from the right, it will draw a ruler. I can line it up to see that blue line, to kind of see if everything is lined up correctly. Okay, there you go. Now I can also maybe want to center this text. But that's kind of the idea here. Also, maybe I could turn one of these into, oh yeah, I was going to add to it. There we go. The Come Celebrate, our new location. Light, and then change case. Case, there we go. And I want that to be white. There we go. We just kind of center it on top here. You could even kind of spread out the kerning a little bit, or the tracking. There you go. So this is how you would do a poster design. You kind of saw the thought process with it. I showed you how to add some really cool embellishments to it. Remember, the large information is at the top. We want to box things off, use borders where you can. Are there any questions about how I achieved a look, or how to get this? Where'd be a good spot to put the logo? Very good question. You could put it here at the bottom. If you had, here, I'll just type one out real quick. GST is a very good question. Thank you for asking that. So just grab this logo here. There we go. So there are a few places you could put the logo. Sometimes what I see students doing is making the logo the artwork, because since they can't have graphics, they sometimes think, well, it's the only thing that's pleasing, so I'll just make it really big and put it up there. Logos should be small. They should be the afterthought. You can put it up at the top, and that's fine. Probably not even that big. It can be small at the top, or it can be here at the bottom. There's no right or wrong. Sometimes you'll see it at the top right or the top left, just depending on how you formatted, or whoops, logo should be the very bottom. If you're going to put it at the bottom, it should probably be the last thought to the layout and design. I like having it at the top because it kind of says, you know, what company is having this grand opening. So I'm not opposed to having it at the top. I just don't want it to be the artwork. You know what I mean? So I'd probably do it at the top there. But try it out. Try doing banners, borders. I mean, I wouldn't go crazy with embellishments. I did a layout that kind of seemed to incorporate a little bit of all of it. You can do some other things. Let me show you. I really like this one, the one I showed you in my slide, the summer picnic. Just, there's not a whole lot going on, and it's very, very effective. Let me just show you really quick how to lay this out if you decided to go this route. I'm going to delete this. And expand this. Terry, does that help answer your question? It can be at the top or the bottom. I don't want it kind of randomly placed like the middle, kind of have some thought to it. If it's at the top, it's saying, this is the company having the grand opening. If it's at the bottom, it's saying, you know, there's more information to be found at our company. So it makes sense to kind of have it either at the top or the bottom. All right, so with this one, it's very simple background, but I like the way that the text is structured. So with this one, it uses lines. So grand, is it a cool font? I'll just use Futura for now. I notice it's a light font. The type is also lowercase. So that kind of adds a really cool effect. Okay, and then the font isn't a straight black. I like the dark charcoal gray, and you can adjust the color on your color picker if you want. But I like the dark charcoal gray. You don't want to go too light of a gray because then it doesn't print well. But I do like this shade, so we'll stick with that. So I'll go about 50 point on the grand, and then we want opening. And this I do want big and I do want heavy. So I'll go bold. And this one needs to be bigger. Here we go. And I'll just use their color scheme since that's what we're going for. I think the gray and the orange look great. I like the spacing between grand and opening. And then I'll use the line tool to create the line. Now line it up at the base of the text. And we'll go, I still want to use that charcoal gray. So what I'll do is I will grab it, line it up at the base of the D. I'll use my ruler guide. If I pull down, it'll let me line it up so I can see where it is. I'm gonna run it right there. Okay, so it's pretty much lined up correctly. And then just to extend this now, they had a really cool idea to put the date or some other information kind of intersecting the line a little bit. So grand opening, and then let's see, have our location would probably go here. And the idea here is you want to center that line right in the middle of that O, so it looks like it's all on the same plane. So that's kind of a neat way to start your layout. You could stack some more information like you're invited. Move this over. Change this to Futura. New book. We'll make this much smaller. I'll left justify it. I want to line it up right with that G. I don't know, just play with it, whatever would look good. But this is kind of how you would stack it. And maybe I will just keep the same font as what I had because that seemed to work. I don't want hyphens or widows, so we need to be careful with that. Let's see, what else do we need to watch for? There you go. There you go. And then you can just kind of place your information here on the left side where you see fit. So here's another way to start out your layout. And then again, your logo could go here at the bottom, kind of like they have it, bottom right. That's a cool place for it. Or you could put it at the top right. Kind of add some balance. You've got all that white space at the top, so it wouldn't hurt to kind of feature your logo. So hopefully this helps. This is a good starting point for you guys. Like again, I just found these on Google, so if you just want to look and see if you find a layout that you really like and try to achieve it. I was trying to do something that was simple, very text heavy, so that it featured the typography. Again, you don't need a big bold color in the background. Sometimes you just need a little pop of color. So are there any questions before we end? Okay. Well, hopefully this gives you a good starting point and gives you some ideas of where to go with this. But this is what you'll be expected, be graded on, you know, how you aligned everything. Did you use your rulers to line up everything in your guides? And just make sure it looks good and clean. If you have any questions, you can email me or come to the multi-session on Wednesday, same time, and I can help you from there. Have a great night. Thanks for coming, Terry.